Reddit covers so many different topics that there truly is something for everyone on there, and while lots of what is posted might be interesting or thought-provoking, there's no doubt that there is plenty of it that is just straight up strange, oddities, mysteries, and other unexplained circumstances that seem to manage to baffle the OP, the commenters, and everyone else that stumbles across it. So here's another series of mysteries found on Reddit, and rabbit holes to fall down and explore yourself. Journal found in the desert. For our first entry, we're headed over to the r/weird subreddit, where a user made a post about a journal that they had found in the desert. They included a photograph with the journal in their hand, with handwritten text still mainly legible on the final few pages. The original poster has since deleted their account. Here's a transcript of what was in the image provided, although some of the information had been redacted by the poster by blacking it out. Quote, "If you see this, you mean a lot to me. You've been a huge part of my life and experiences while in college. You've made most of my college amazing and memorable. You are much appreciated and loved by me. This is just a message for my passwords/electronics/people to contact." It then includes a list of contacts that the user had obscured. The final section states the following. Quote, "3 involved. Person 1, mom of child provoking incident. Person 2, confronting mom. Person 3, other member of Person 2's party." While users were quick to agree that it was extremely odd, there was also speculation on exactly what it meant and who had written it. Indeed, much of the content and the tone seemed to imply that whoever the author was, they had little to no intention of ever making it back from wherever they were when they wrote it. This worrying tone was picked up by multiple of these subreddit users, with the most common comment being some variety of suggesting informing the authorities. And it is understandable why this is the case, as the note itself reads as an extremely final sort of statement, and not one made by someone who is in a good place mentally. Some suggested that the OP reach out to some of the contacts that were listed in the note, either to just let them know what they had found, or perhaps to provide them with some closure if the person who wrote the note was still missing and they had no idea what had happened to them. Some of the users also noted that the handwriting on the 2 pages appears to be different, at least at a cursory glance. For some of them, this only added to the creepiness, as they could not think of any rational reason for why 2 individuals would have been involved in the writing of the note, but others suggested that it was simply the same person writing in print and cursive. The top response, with nearly 2,500 upvotes, spoke about a recent case where a missing person's remains were found in the desert, specifically because someone found some of their belongings in a similar situation and alerted authorities. The OP would follow the advice given to them and reported it to the police. In a follow-up post, they included a photograph of authorities, presumably collecting the notebook, and then a further screenshot. The OP managed to get in touch with one of the contacts that were provided in the original note and reached out to them. They would get a hold of the journal writer and provide OP with a screenshot that seemed to imply they were fine and well. When they are asked if it is theirs, they state, quote, "I think so, but you can toss/burn it. I don't need it." A surprisingly happy end for a very odd affair. Heartman Mystery. For our next entry, we're in the Internet Mystery subreddit and looking at a post by a user called CoolGuy10213. The main drive of their post is that they are trying to find the origin of an obscure image that they claim to have spotted popping up everywhere recently. They state that they even saw it in the intro of a video made by a YouTuber Blame It on Jorge. Another YouTuber called Virtual Carbon also made a video on it, going more in depth on the mystery behind it and trying to get to the bottom of it. There seems to be little accepted information on it other than the fact that it was probably taken in the 70s or 80s. The image in question is admittedly bizarre, showing a man in a costume that consists of almost entirely heart-shaped pieces stood in front of a couple of vehicles, which is probably where the rough dating comes from. Other than Virtual Carbon finding a photo of someone in a similar costume, there seemed to be little concrete information available. There were only 8 comments on the post, with the first being a link to the Virtual Carbon video. Within this video itself, it becomes clear that while the Heartman is certainly an obscure piece of media, there is a particularly odd reason for it. The lack of information available seems to have been a deliberate effort by a user that claimed they were an archivist that was protecting the source of the image. They stated, quote, "The point of the art piece was to have no context and explanation, thus I shall not tell you." Another post in the Where Is This subreddit from 9 months previously provided a little more context. This also included additional images from the same shoot, showing more of the location and of our Heartman being shown in various other places and engaging in different activities. Users identified the location as Ginza in Tokyo. By comparing information on the signs and vehicles in the background, users managed to pin the photo dates to either 1979, 81, 82, or 88, since these were the only years the particular production visible in a billboard in the background was being shown. Further analysis by comparing buildings and light posts between various years narrowed down the date to either 1981 or 1982. It appears to have been taken from a fashion magazine, and it was a form of a Japanese local hero. The user that had originally uploaded the image, going by the name of Docpile, moved on from his stance of not revealing any information and instead stated he would try and find out. It was a series of clippings from French and Japanese magazines. After the virtual carbon video was posted, Docpile responded to a user's question regarding the background info, claiming he hadn't had time to look into it. However, he would then post on his Instagram with a physical copy of the magazine and the following text, quote, "The internet is mad at me because I put these images online 6 years ago and didn't share its origin because I was doing this project where I was placing images online with no information, because that's just the annoying thing I was up to at the time. Anyway, now there's a YouTube video about how it's a piece of lost media, and there's a whole community trying to find its origin. Should I continue to gatekeep or spill the beans?" This final clue gave some more details about the Heartman, gleaned from the page that was shown, as well as some captions confirming that they had the correct location. It also showed that he was really called Tokyo Lonely Heart. And while there is still the exact magazine left to identify, despite Docpile's strange efforts to keep it all a secret, almost everything worthwhile about the Heartman has now become public knowledge. Weird experiences. Our next entry is from the r/weird subreddit again. The weirdest experience of my life just happened. In the post, they explained how they were stood on the deck at a beach house late at night with 2 others when they heard screaming. They noticed lights out in the water that seemed to be torches and flashlights, and saw someone dropping below the surface repeatedly while screaming variations of "help me." Surrounding this apparently drowning man were a group of others who were doing nothing to intervene. The OP ran down to the water and made their way towards the group, but was flatly ignored when they asked if there was any help needed. In fact, the whole group just ran out of the water past them without speaking. Another neighbor had come out by this point to see what was happening and try and help the apparently drowning man. One of the group told her, quote, "This is the Brotherhood, don't interfere." The OP and the rest of her group went back to the beach house and watched for a while as the group continued to do strange things, like run into the water, then out, then bury themselves in the sand and run back into the water. Their post to the subreddit was half trying to make sense of whatever it was they saw that night, and half out of concern for the person they heard apparently drowning. Despite the very odd and creepy undertones of the situation, users were quick to focus in on a couple of points that probably did a little to set the OP's mind at ease. The first was that the actions that the group were taking bore at least some resemblance to Special Forces training exercises. The extreme physical exertion, the water, the late-night setup all seemed to closely match what units like that might do. Additionally, the top response pointed out, quote, "USAF Fire Protection Service out of Tyndall Air Force Base call themselves the Brotherhood. They're out of Panama City, Florida." This would not only cover why they were doing what they were doing, but also why they referred to themselves in the way that they did. Not that it makes it any less disturbing for the OP and the group that she was with. A comment by a now deleted account made a very good point. Quote, "That's so strange that they would belong to a real thing and not be able to effectively communicate that or give anyone nearby a heads up. Freaking people out and then saying, 'We're the Brotherhood, don't interfere,' instead of 'Please leave, this is a training exercise,' just makes it seem like they're a bunch of drunk dorks LARPing and you should interfere or one of them will drown." The OP clarified in a later comment that they had contacted local law enforcement, who didn't seem to take the whole thing very seriously, especially not since the entire group were running in and out of the ocean seemingly voluntarily. Other commenters mentioned that while it may share some attributes with Special Operations training, there is a chance that it was just people either cosplaying as them or amateurs that were trying to emulate it for some other reason. Either way, it seems that the OP was at least satisfied that no one was being actively drowned as the rest of the group watched on. But whether it is a satisfactory conclusion to their mystery is harder to say. Note under a panel. We're staying in r/weird for our next entry, where a user by the name of Issaquah Highlands posted about a strange note that they had found in their storage cabinet. They included a series of 3 images, with the first showing the note saying, "Don't look under the floor." The second image was a demonstration of where the note was located inside of the cabinet, and the third showed the flip side, which was a series of numbers, 29065300489382. And it is fair to say that even after the hive mind of Reddit had its chance with it, it didn't seem like the mystery was any clearer. One of the more common suggestions, and the one that the OP even hinted at themselves in the title, was that it was nothing more than a prank, or a troll, a random mysterious note that meant pretty much nothing, and was intended to simply confuse whoever found it. One of the funnier suggestions from a commenter was that if you indeed go against what the note had said and ripped out the floor, that you would only find a second note stating, "I told you not to look under the floor." Other suggestions for what the numbers could mean included a serial number of a firearm, a book in the Library of Congress, or perhaps the most obscure of all, a library card number. Multiple users made the same suggestion, with one even adding to it with the suggestion that under the floor will just be a raft of unreturned library books. Users also suggested that it could be coordinates, a security box code, or any number of other possibilities, but without any concrete solution, and with the OP stating that they would not be tearing the floor up, which received a number of downvotes. The most likely solution is that it was probably a troll all along, as the OP suggested, unless any of you have some novel suggestions for what these numbers might mean in this context. Let us know in the comments if you do. Dragon Ball Ultimate Lost Media. This one definitely caught my eye, being that I'm not only the Lost Media guy, but also a fan of Dragon Ball, and the fact that I somehow missed this when looking through the history of Lost Media with this franchise. Go check out the Lost Media of Dragon Ball after this if you're interested. Anyway, this post comes courtesy of r/Internet Mysteries by user DryJudgment7661, titled, "Supposed Dragon Ball Lost Media, Dragon Ball Ultimate, and the Mysterious User Behind the Claim." The user details some bizarre hoax behind Dragon Ball Ultimate, one of many alleged sequels to Dragon Ball taking place after GT, much like Dragon Ball AF. Keep in mind, this rabbit hole begins well before the likes of Dragon Ball Super's introduction, but spans over 2 decades. The post goes into the history of the user seemingly obsessed with finding this alleged lost piece of Dragon Ball media known as Dragon Ball Ultimate. Keep in mind, with this guy, we don't know if he's trolling or what, but he doesn't seem to be hurting anyone, so please don't bother this guy just because of this video. This post just seems to document the decades-long search this person has gone through in regards to a piece of Dragon Ball media which doesn't even exist, which all started when this user was in a store in New York City in the early 2000s, sometime between 2001 and 2003, and allegedly saw a clip from an unreleased Dragon Ball TV sequel that was never released. Obviously, this could have been a false memory and could have been some sort of Dragon Ball material which just hadn't yet aired in the West, like one of the old DBZ or OG Dragon Ball movies, or something like the obscure OVAs that just never got a dub or any sort of home media release. Or maybe this just never even happened at all. In a Dragon Ball Super discussion post from 2014 on the Kanzenshu forums, we see this person describing this Dragon Ball Ultimate show in depth, and it's quite a read. Quote, "I was given the opportunity to read script of a series called Dragon Ball Ultimate a long time ago, which was in between the 100 years GT skipped, by Toei, and it was an abandoned project. A good series. Too bad because it was better than every Dragon Ball title to date, despite being associated with GT. Companies do things. They move on. Nobody outside will hear about a lot of things in the business industry. It will be out one day if current Dragon Ball, Super, Heroes, other related projects do well. They would want to cash out. Also learned that there were 5 specials planned for GT, but only 2 were animated, and only 1 was put on the market. I've seen both and read the rest. As for the GT scrapped specials, I doubt we will get those. Ultimate, on the other hand, they are interested, but even more interested in Super and Heroes. Ultimate is basically what GT should have been, but surpasses anything Dragon Ball in terms of action and strength. Story was a very good expansion and gave closure. The power and battles are nothing like the display of power normal DBZ has shown, and there is a SSJ6 level that can answer every level of power. They crossed that line literally. They stopped at 8, which was a true celestial, Heaven's Gate Saiyajin, cosmic. Yes, they fight in the same manner, but feels like DBZ meets Marvel, if you will. Fighting in core of planets, suns, supermassive black holes, solar systems, galaxies, universe, multiverse, omni. Power scaling is ridiculous, but the story was really good. That's not the focal point of the story, but only one aspect of it. There are no Dragon Balls once in the third saga. Okay, I think you get the point. This is all just completely made up, and there are even more strange posts detailing this insane fanfiction. But why does this person have a history going back decades, diving into this non-existent piece of media? I mean, who knows? But I think this top comment on the Reddit post describing this entire history sums it up best. Quote, "Back in the late 90s and early 2000s, there were a lot of Dragon Ball hoaxes that surfaced on the heels of Z in the US. What it sounds like, in my personal opinion, is someone with unchecked mental illness fell for one of these hoaxes and became hyper-fixated on it to the point of creating an elaborate delusion around a series that he's convinced himself actually existed, even though it didn't. 20 years seems a little long for both an ARG and a hoax for laughs." Again, this guy seems entirely harmless, so please don't seek them out and bother them about this, but I do feel bad for him. It seems like he genuinely deluded himself into believing this Dragon Ball Ultimate show was real. How else could you keep up the same lie for 20 years? Either way, definitely an interesting rabbit hole as a Dragon Ball fan. Google Translate rabbit hole. For our next entry, we're back on r/weird, and this time looking at a recent post that blew up and became very visible across the rest of Reddit, gathering 8,000 upvotes. The post was a series of screenshots that the user took where they are using Google Translate's feature and have the source language set to French and the output language as traditional Chinese. Instead of typing in French, however, they have used Chinese characters in the source box, and it seemed to break the system in a disturbing way. For example, the first input is, "Can you take a picture for me?" in Chinese, but the output becomes, "The Chinese people are facing the danger of being killed." The next few prompts, written in Chinese characters rather than French, ask a number of follow-up questions, such as, "Are you serious?" and "Is this a distress signal?" with each generating an unrelated Chinese output. The post took off, with users trying out the process and getting their own strange and often creepy results. One translated the phrase, "I went to the store yesterday," from English to French to Chinese, then back to French, and the output became, "The Chinese people are in the process of being slaughtered." Multiple users attempted different variations, following various translation routes, and the languages that seem to be the cause of the error are French and Spanish being translated into Chinese. Almost all of these creepy errors appear in the Chinese language output model, and while the majority of the thread consists of users posting their own results and trying to generate similarly creepy outputs, there are some explanations offered by users. A user by the name of Chief Drinking Bear posted this comment that offered a proposed explanation. Quote, "Might have something to do with character encodings. UTF-8 uses variable width encoding, so more bytes for Chinese characters than Latin alphabet characters. So if the input is expecting French, but Chinese is input, it is possible that it is interpreting 3-byte Chinese characters as 3 individual 1-byte Latin characters. Still, if that were the case, I find it unlikely that the decomposed characters in Chinese would correspond to anything intelligible in French, unless the phrases were specifically chosen to exploit this. Just an idea. It is probably something else entirely, though." Another commenter noted that the translator uses an LLM, and when combined with these unexpected input characters, it may be the source of the bizarre outputs. Another user points out that as well as leveraging an LLM, there is a vast amount of user input data that is used by Google in their translation services, and that this has been something that people have abused for fun before. User Hey Vince states, quote, people abuse this for fun quite a bit at this point. If they manage to do it with English, which likely has a humongous amount of input, putting the wrong input language would be a walk in the park, because you can basically decide from the get-go. There is a lot of error in putting the wrong language input to begin with, but as soon as it is public in any way, take it with a mountain of salt. Not an expert in any way, but I did some work as a freelance translator in the past, and actually used Google tools for it. Not this basic one though. And while some error due to the unexpected input format, where it is expecting French lettering and receiving Chinese characters with separate encoding, sounds like the most plausible explanation for this error, there is no doubt that this was one that left users scratching their heads for a while in the aftermath. Weird and disturbing YouTube video. Next, we're back to the Internet Mystery subreddit and a post made by CoolGuy10213 titled, "Weird and disturbing video I saw back then on YouTube, unable to find it." This is the same user who posted about the Heartman mystery we discussed prior, and the title is certainly accurate. In it, they describe a video that they stumbled across on YouTube sometime between 2017 and 2019 that they don't seem to have been able to find again since. There is a lot of filler description in the post around what they were searching at the time and the context in which they found it, but when it comes to describing exactly what was in the video, this is how they put it. Quote, "The video started off with a woman saying she is going to cover herself in Nutella and started to smirk a little and was standing next to a streetlight and I think with a bush in front of a brick wall behind her, and she would run up to random people that came close to her and she would say to lick the Nutella off her." After I saw that, I said, "What the fuck is this?" So I closed YouTube and went on to play a game. I was left extremely grossed out by the video. The only other information that they provide is that it has an eerie feeling to it. The location feels liminal to some degree, and they believe it had been fairly popular, garnering 250,000 views if they are remembering accurately. They also specify that they are not able to find it in their viewing history, since they didn't have an account at the time, and they have already checked the Internet Archive without success. And for every bit as strange as the video sounds, it didn't get much of a response on the subreddit. There were only 12 comments and 35 upvotes, with little in the way of solid leads. The top comment says it sounds like something Marina Abramovic would do, a Serbian artist most well known for her odd performance art, and almost certainly a joke suggestion in this case. None of the other comments gave any concrete leads, other than remembering other older channels with similar bizarre vibes. Searching for variations in the remembered title and the concept equally do not seem to bring up anything that would match what the OP seems to remember. While there are a surprising number of videos featuring people covering themselves in Nutella, none seem to be of the correct era or have the same vibe as the OP described. If you happen to remember something similar or a video that would match this description, let us know in the comments and maybe we can solve this one for the OP. Ear print on the window. We're back in the world of r/weird for our next entry, and this one certainly matches the theme of the sub very well. A user posted an image of the back door of their home with a clear ear print on the glass. As part of their title, they also included the probably sensible addition of, "I will be buying home security cameras immediately," and the post understandably blew up, with more than 5,500 comments and nearly 130,000 upvotes. The top responses were mainly a combination of users acknowledging that this was extremely creepy and scary, as well as the usual attempts at humor where users decided the image would make a good album cover. Some pointed out that ear prints are allegedly unique in the same way that fingerprints are, and that the OP should contact the authorities. The location of the print on the door does make it look as though whoever left it was listening at the window, possibly as they attempted to unlock the door, and the OP clarified that the print was indeed on the outside of the glass. The OP also stated that they found their car door open the same day that they found the ear print, leading to the whole situation being even more worrying for them and their family. The OP would post an update later to the same subreddit with the title, "Hello everyone, this is the ear window guy. Earlier I was playing with my 4-year-old son and noticed this. This time the image was not of the window, but of the tree line toward the edge of OP's property, where they could see a figure just visible, watching them." Especially given the attention that the initial post drew, and considering how strange the follow-up image was, this garnered similar amounts of attention. The top post was from a user asking what happened after the photograph was taken. and the OP replied with this, quote, "He stood still for about 2 minutes, then moved back to the left direction. No idea how long he'd been there watching. Police were called right after I took the pictures, while I maintained a visual on him." While there were some accusations of the post being faked, or the images being AI, the OP posted other shots of his backyard that matched both the initial earprint photograph and the tree-line shot. In other comments, OP stated, quote, "For those suggesting, I have firearms. I'm also a combat vet. I have 2 small children, ages 4 and 1, so weapons are locked away. The earprint is on the outside, and also my car door was open when I went out there. Nothing disturbed inside the car though." And they would later confirm that they bought security cameras and had them connected to solar panels so that they wouldn't die. As far as what happened to Ear Window Guy, the most that OP has stated was that the authorities dealt with it, and beyond that, they've posted no further updates, although they are active in other subs, so we can be sure that they and their family are still okay. Certainly one of the weirder posts to have come across. Unidentified South Park song. For our final entry today, we're in the r/Lost Media subreddit and looking at a post by user Spare Spam He. They were watching the South Park episode Cartoon Wars Part 2, and they were trying to track down a song that was playing in the background. Their description of it was, quote, "like a traditional song of Islamic, possibly wider Middle Eastern origin," and while they acknowledge that this is perhaps not the most high-stakes mystery of all time, they are curious about the origin and want to find where the sample came from. They seem confident that it was not something that was made by either the South Park or Comedy Central team, and suggest that it could have been from a stock CD or a royalty-free sample. And while there were only 10 comments made on the posts, almost every single one of them was substantial in some way. The top comment suggested putting it on Lost Wave in order to have it on the radars of users who specialize in finding lost music. The other comments are helpful to a degree, but the last comment from a user named DifficultQuiet7731 is where it seems to have come together. They point the OP towards a sample library named 0G Deepest India 1996 and ask them to look under the section titled Orchestra. There's a sample named Mumbai 02 that matches the track OP is looking for. They also provide the link from the archive to the OP to check for themselves. While all the major elements from the track are there, they are chopped up, and there is a question on whether this was stripped from a different original track or if these samples are what was used to make the South Park track. Either way, the OP seems satisfied enough that this could well be the source for their mystery song.